Good morning, everybody. We'll get started here in about 30 seconds or so. Wait for a couple more people to come in. Good morning, everybody. My name is Craig Boston. I am a business analyst here with the Small Business Development Center in Northeastern Arizona. And thank you all for joining us for our third in the series of putting it all together. A little bit about the Small Business Development Centers. I think there's 1,000 of us around the country, but we provide no cost, confidential, one-on-one counseling by experienced professionals. We help Arizona small businesses. We do assistance with startups and growth, exits, funding. We've been doing a lot with the pandemic response and more. So that's a little bit about Small Business Development Centers, and we're in each of the communities to assist anybody who has a small business. Reach out to us. This morning we're here from the guys over at Scout Collective, and they're going to continue their series. But first we'll hear from Robert Theobald from the Arizona Commerce Authority. Robert?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Give me 1 second. Got just a couple of slides I want to show everybody. I'm Robert Theobald, Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services at the Arizona Commerce Authority. And just want to share a few things real quick. I'm glad to be here with Craig and Ben. We worked with Ben in the past and Joel, and they're great presenters. I know it's going to be good sessions, so thank you all for joining. But I just want to share some of ACA's programs, Arizona Commerce Authority's programs with everybody real quick so you can know some of the things that the state can help provide for small businesses. First, we have our small business services that I'm over, and we can help you work with the SBA, work with the SBDCs, local banking contacts. We work with the SBDCs and SCORE across the state, along with a number of other no-cost programs that are available. Our workforce division can help support your small businesses. You're looking to add employees or upskill some of your employees. And then if you're a manufacturer, the Arizona Manufacturing Extension Partnership is there to help support your needs and as you're looking to grow and expand. Additionally, if you're just looking to start a business, we have our small business checklist that can help you identify the licensing, registration, and compliance needs at the local, state, and federal levels. And then another program I want to share, and we've had Ben on this program before, is our Small Business Boot Camp and Resource Collective. This is a program that we started last April, so almost a year ago, to help support small businesses work through the COVID crisis and return stronger than ever. It is a community, the initiative is supported by our community partners, and we've utilized over 100 different community partners. These are experts in their fields to help provide content and resources to help small businesses work through the crisis. And this is a link, azcommerce.com/small-business-boot-camp. And I'll post this in the chat box as well. But if you go to this website for the Small Business Boot Camp, you can find the links to the upcoming sessions so you can register for those. And you can also find the information on all the previous sessions. We record all of our sessions so you can go back and watch them anytime you want. If you missed one or want to rewatch one based on what your needs are. We've done over 125 sessions. They're all recorded, so it's a great library of resources available at no cost to all small businesses across the state. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time back over to Craig. I will post my contact information and the link to the boot camp in the chat box.
Thank you, Robert. We'll get started right away. There's a lot to cover. Ben Rushlow with Scout Collective and Joel are going to jump in here. And if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A and they'll be monitoring them throughout the presentation. Ben, it's all yours.
Excellent. Hey, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Robert. I think it's so great, just as an aside, that there's good resources both at the kind of state level and in the community level to really help small businesses. I think it's just awesome. Appreciate you guys having us on again. This is the third in the series of webinars. We'll kind of recap the other two for those who maybe haven't checked those out, but glad to be back. And we're going to hopefully enjoy some good information sharing and some good content over the next 45 minutes or so. Just quick introduction. I mean, hopefully you guys all know Joel and I, because this is the third time we've been here, but we're from Scout Collective. We're a digital marketing company. What does that mean? Really means we help people with websites, social media, and Google My Business. We're based in the White Mountains, so up in Show Low, but we actually are supporting kind of all small businesses across Arizona. In fact, we just recently are working with a client based in Prescott. So we're here to help, but we're also really passionate about just helping small businesses in general succeed, whether that means working with a company like ours or just doing it yourself. Really, the foundation of this webinar series is helping businesses think about being able to do it themselves, right? Where you need help, get it. Of course, there's companies like ours and others who can help, but we really set up this webinar content thinking about someone trying to do it themselves, because we know as a small business owner, sometimes you have to do it all yourself at the beginning to make it work. But you're going to hear more from me today than Joel. Joel actually and I did a little separate video that you'll see a link to about Instagram stories. And Joel's also going to be managing the Q&A chat box for questions that are coming up during the presentation. Put those in there, and then either Joel can answer them while I'm talking, or we will hit them at the end. So throw your questions in, and we'll get right in. So let's just remind each other, when we talk about digital marketing, sometimes there's an idea that it's really kind of secret sauce, like really complex, and there's lots of crazy terms and SEO and, cost per click and all this stuff, right? And those of us who aren't technical, and a lot of small business owners don't come into small business being technical. You don't necessarily have to be technical, right? They get kind of overwhelmed about what is this digital marketing? And I think it can actually be used to confuse people and take advantage of small business owners. But we really need to just remember that at the end of the day, all the stuff we're doing online with digital marketing is really about human connection, right? And if you keep that at the top or the forefront of your thinking, as you think about investing, whether you're doing it yourself or with somebody else, that's going to really help frame, I think, where you spend your dollars or how you spend your effort. Don't, chase algorithms. Don't get kind of sucked into the latest and greatest. It's really about how do I express my unique, business personality, who I am as a business owner, my unique value proposition to other humans, right? And we all are humans, so we all know how we like to connect about those things. So keep that in mind, I think, as we talk about these concepts or as you go out into the marketplace and try to talk to others about it. Our goal, just like last time, remove some of the mystery. You're going to, hopefully we lay this out pretty simply. We're not going to use terms that you won't understand, lessen some of that intimidation. This can be an intimidating space because it's like, I know I should be online. I know I should have a website. I know I should do, social media, but I don't really know where to start, how to start, right? And of course, we just want to give you a place to start. And just like last time I shared this, if you're working with someone, let's say you don't want to do it yourself, and they can't explain what they're doing for you in very simple terms, then you should run away, right? Because as I said, sometimes there's a bit of a smoke and mirrors, like let's use really fancy terms that no one understands around digital as a way of kind of showing that we're worth, the money. But I think that's actually the inverse. That's the wrong approach, right? You need to have somebody who can explain it to you. How does this connect to my business? How does this return, on my investment, right? What does this mean in terms of reaching more customers? They need to be able to make it simple. So that would just be kind of the overarching takeaway actually from all three webinars is make sure that if you are going to work with somebody, that you're working with someone who can explain it in simple terms. So just to recap, we did webinar 1 in October. I'll talk about what was in that. Webinar 2 in December, and now we're in March, which I can't believe it's already March, which is kind of crazy. For those that have stuck with us all three, which is a big commitment, right? 3 hours of content. Thanks. Hopefully it was useful. You've learned something, and you're kind of taking it into your own small business environment. This is something I'm going to kind of hammer on, Joel. I don't know if you can put this link in the chat directly, but we did launch just a new part of our site /learn that you can actually get a lot of the past content. So as Robert was talking about, we were also in the small business boot camps through the ACA. I have those 2 webinars there. They're more talking about website and Google My Business in addition to social media. The previous 2 webinars in this series are also posted there. You'll see some other content there, like this Instagram stories tutorial that Joel just did. So check that out. It's a really good place. Of course, you can also find that content on the ACA site and the small business site. This is just kind of a way of it's, you know, all in one place. So you can go there and click on it. And I think most all of this is on YouTube. So you can just watch it on YouTube on your phone or on your desktop. Key takeaway from webinar 1 is, you know, just as a summary, right? If you haven't watched, is get on Instagram. We really believe that Instagram is the future, not Facebook. Sorry, Facebook, even though Instagram is owned by Facebook. But you know, Instagram, I think, is where you're going to see businesses more and more. Of course, Facebook matters still, but we're really focused on Instagram. And I think that, in fact, there's some social media agencies that I know that they won't even work with people on Facebook because they feel so strongly about Instagram. We're not quite there, but certainly Instagram is where you should be. And make sure it's a business account. You can convert your account to a business account, and with that, you get a lot of cool stuff like analytics and contact buttons and things like that. Make sure you have a goal when you get on social media. Don't just do it because everyone's doing it. Don't just do it because it's cool. I want to, you know, get likes. You know, most of us, when we have a small business to run, we have limited time. And so you really want to think about a goal. As a goal is to connect to more customers, have more awareness in my community, drive more traffic to my store or my online store, you know, whatever that is. But think about how what you're doing is connecting to an outcome. Be committed. We've talked about this a lot, you know, post a few times a week, 2-3 times a week. And that can be hard. Even for us, we were busy doing some stuff and we didn't post for a few weeks. And I was thinking, man, we're not even following our own advice. But the reality is that it's hard when you're doing a small business and you have customers and you're pulling in a different way, you know, but try to be committed. Don't, you know, go dark for months at a time, right? And then come back on and do like 10 posts in a day. You know, have a steady kind of drip of content. Plan and automate. So as much as you can plan ahead, we really find Google Calendar, other free tools, kind of planning out things. Automate as much as you can, schedule. Don't be intimidated and get help if you need it. Those are all good tips. Again, you can check out the entire webinar if you want for more details if you haven't seen it. Key one on last webinar, which is a little bit more recent, so hopefully we remember that a bit more, is I really think everybody should spend the money. And in our case, you know, for the firms we work with, it's about $500 for a digital first logo, right? There's so much that really starts with having a good logo as a foundation. And there's so much that goes wrong. And again, I would love to be able to share more about things I see in the community, but it's pretty delicate, right? You don't want to have any kind of bad blood there. Not bad blood. You just don't want to make it like an issue for folks because people would know who I was talking about. But I've seen folks who, you know, try to do their own logo, right? Or they kind of really go the cheap way with the free tool. And it just doesn't really present their business in the best way, right? So $500 is not insignificant, but it's certainly not, you know, $10,000, right? And so I would highly recommend, if you do nothing else in digital, is start with a good logo that you can use on all the platforms, that works well in digital, that works well on websites. You can obviously use it in print, et cetera, et cetera. Tell your unique story. So that's really about, you know, remembering that marketing and social media is really about letting folks have a unique view into you, right? So, you know, what we want to make sure we understand with social media is it's a more interactive and more immediate medium, right? And people want to connect with you. So tell them your story, why you got in the business, why you're passionate about the product or service that you're selling, what makes you unique, what makes your employees unique if you have employees, right? What you love about the community that you're in. All of that is really much more important than just kind of flashy stuff on social media. Use hashtags correctly. I think there were some people after that webinar that was like, hey, I finally understand hashtags, which is cool, right? Because hashtags are not just how we sort of think about them in our kind of daily life. If you do think about hashtags, I guess I do, where it's like, you know, something that's like we use kind of as a phrase, like hashtag, you know, Scout Collective webinar, like that's really not how they're used. They're used as kind of meta groupings or way of grouping content together, right? Or kind of linking to different types of content. So think about that. Canva, which Joel demoed very well last time, great free tool. You can do all sorts of cool design stuff in there. Really, if you're not a graphic designer, like I'm not, but I can still use Canva, right? Canva actually allows me to create some, if I wanted to, Joel's mostly doing it, but create some, interesting looking posts with kind of drag and drop capabilities, right? And then of course, another great free resource is your phone. I'm a big iPhone person. I didn't put iPhone there, but I think obviously other phones are good too. But your camera on your phone can take amazing pictures, and of course you can edit those. And really that can become a big part of your social media content engine, is just the pictures you're taking in your business, of your employees, of your product, of your community. That's all really, really good stuff. Okay, so today, what are we going to talk about? Quickly, digital foundation review. I'm going to do a brief rant. I'm sure you all are here for that, me ranting about websites. I know websites are not social media, but I'm still going to rant about them. I'm going to talk about pillars of posting, which is an idea that I actually am showing from another social agency, which I'll credit in a second. I'm going to talk about analytics. We're going to talk about paid promotions in Instagram. And then we'll end with sort of how do we take advantage of the summer, right? Because we all know that the summer season is where most of us are slammed, in especially if we're in anything related to tourism in our communities. And so how do we take advantage of that? So let's get into it. A lot of content to cover, but as you can tell, I'll try to go through it quickly. Bonus, we talked about this last time. We didn't quite get it done. We got it done this time, which was we have a Instagram story tutorial. I won't take too much time here, but Joel and I put together, I think, a pretty good overview. It's about 11-minute video that looks at how you start to use stories if you're intimidated by how the heck do I actually put stuff on a story, or what do I put on a story, or what options are there. Go to scoutcollective.digital.learn, or when this presentation gets sent out, you'll actually be able to click on that link directly. But if you can't wait, if you're excited, go to the learn area of our site. You'll see that, and you can check it out and kind of learn more about how to use Instagram stories, which I'd highly encourage you guys to start using. So digital foundation, let's remember, right? Social media doesn't exist in a vacuum. And I think that's the problem sometimes is as we think about these things, they're overwhelming. There's, first of all, they can be overwhelming. Or you could add a bunch of other stuff here, right? Email marketing and physical marketing and mailing, stuff, whatever. But for digital, I kind of think of these three as the key, right? So social media, Google My Business, and the website, and they all need to work together. Google My Business is where most people will find your business. And so if you haven't claimed that, right? And we have in the ACA bootcamp section, we talk about how to claim it and what's important there. But you need to claim it, you need to update it, you need to have your hours updated, et cetera, et cetera. But super important that you do that. The website is really going to be more for the call to action, the more detailed content, right? You're not going to put, for example, your menu fully on social media necessarily, or if you're a restaurant, or all the services, or have long form blogs about, the awesome stuff that you're doing. Doesn't really work on social media. It's stuff that is important for sure to exist, and it should exist in your website. It's not necessarily going to be updated every day, every week, like social media will, but it's super, super important. Excuse me. And then social media is about creating awareness, building relationships, and it's much more immediate, right? And so all of this needs to work together. It can't be really disconnected. And of course, if you remember this from last time, depending on what kind of business you are, you might focus more on social media or more on your website, right? And everyone needs Google My Business. And the question is why? Google owns like 95% of search engine. So everyone who's looking for your business on their phone, on their desktop is going through Google, right? And you want to show up there correctly and make sure that it's working correctly. And there's a bit of a trick to how you actually claim it. But once you do, it's pretty easy. It's not a huge effort to kind of keep it where it needs to be. So I was thinking about, this is my rant on a website, so allow me this. I was thinking about showing websites in our community that are really bad. And I thought that's probably not smart. So I'm going to use one that's actually based on my personal experience, right? So we have a house down in the valley that we're remodeling. And of course, with COVID, it's been very hard to find contractors and things like that. And we had a list of a few really good ones that were recommended to us. And we started to go look at their websites. And this is actually the contractor that I'm using and I love. So this is why I feel okay showing his website. Clearly, he's not really investing in this, right? And so this was almost enough for us to not use him because I was like, this looks like it was done, it probably was, about 15 years ago, about 10 years ago. And it doesn't really reflect. Then of course I got, recommendations and we talked to him and I love them. And, I would highly recommend them actually. But it's an interesting one where it kind of shows us that the reality of the business is reflected in a way that's not very great digitally, right? And this is actually, if I looked at our existing community in Show Low and Pine Top, there's a lot worse examples, right? And so, but I didn't want to call that out. Or people that don't have a website are using Facebook as a website, right? And so the reality is like, this is going to catch up with you at some point, right? And so I'm not going to go through this in a lot of detail, but there are 10 kind of key web design principles that we've talked about. We actually did talk about this in the boot camp with the ACA. But you should be thinking about, if you have, first of all, do you have a website? That's number one. Facebook is not a website. Number three, I guess, is if you do have a website, has it been updated in the last year or two? Because websites are like, dog years, right? So 1 year is like 7 years. And then think about, does your website hit these things, right? Does it work on mobile? Most traffic is now coming from mobile, right? Does it tell your unique story? Is there analytics so you understand if it's effective? Is it fresh and visually appealing, right? Is it secure? All of these things are not necessarily hard to do, and you can actually do it yourself. Of course, you could work with someone like us, but it's super important. And I think that kind of digital decay will catch up with us if we're not careful. And especially with COVID, what we're seeing with COVID is more and more digital transformation. If you're watching the news, reading the kind of financial blogs, more and more businesses are shifting digital in terms of everything, right? Food delivery, and why is Peloton going so crazy because of their digital at home stuff? I mean, everything is going more and more where people are relying on digital. And if you don't have a website, I think you're gonna be in trouble. And this is kind of how I think about old websites. It's like, do I want to, if that was my Airbnb, would I want to stay there if I looked at that? Probably not. And it does have an effect, right? It doesn't mean it's everything, because of course people might know you word of mouth, you might get great recommendations. But if you don't have a good website, it does reflect poorly on the business. And just lastly, I promise the last part of my rant, but from a pure dollars and cents perspective, if you're like, yeah, Ben, that's great, I don't have time and I don't have the skills to do a website, right? So, but it could be expensive. And so I just in full transparency, most small business websites maybe cost $2,000 to $5,000. Simple sites could be less. E-commerce sites could be on that higher end, right? You could do that as a one-time cost, or maybe you do it as a monthly cost. We offer both, right? Whatever. But I guess the question is, what is 10% more customers worth to you in your business, right? So, what is faster, easier communication worth to you, like dealing with people, scheduling appointments, email versus kind of everything on the phone? What is that higher brand perception? So the example of my contractor, that was a big deal that they almost lost based on their website, right? How many of those are happening and actually being lost by you not having a website? How about more of your time back through digital transformation? Again, more things online, more efficiency, reducing customer frustration. My wife was just talking recently about getting her COVID vaccine. And she was like, why can't I do this online, like through a pharmacy up here? It was like, why do I have to call? And I can tell you, my wife and I are of an age that people still do call, right? But you go to Joel's age, no one wants to call, right? And so there's a massive frustration when I can't get information that I need online and I have to call. And so, what is that worth in terms of people saying, no, I'm going to go to somebody else who has the information online? Or increase loyalty, right? So people who actually are like, wow, this business is cool, they're cutting edge, they're investing in the business, which digital is one way you invest. I think it's really, really important to think about that as you think about your websites. So rant over. Thanks for humoring me. We'll go back to social media, but I do think websites are super important. So let's talk a little bit about pillars of posting. This came from a great social media company in Phoenix, woman-owned, really, really kind of hot actually in terms of what they're doing. I follow them, get a lot of good information from them. You should check them out. Their Instagram handles there, their website's there. But she posted this idea of pillars of kind of social media. And in her example, it's 9. I don't think it has to be 9. But what we're trying to solve with this is getting away from just kind of pray and spray random posting, right? Because sometimes we're like under a crunch. We're like, yeah, we're trying to get our 2 to 5 posts a week or whatever you decide, right? We're trying to be consistent. And we're like, what do I post? Okay, I'm under the gun. I got to post something. What do I post? And we sort of might end up posting random stuff, right? And instead, what she's saying is the way you keep followers and keep your messaging consistent is think about and I would say 5, right? 5 to 9 pillars of what you're going to post, right? And her example, which is a little hard to see here, is they're always going to have posts that talk about services. Again, they're a social media agency, clients, their employees, their team. They're going to give tips, self-care tips, because they have a lot of kind of young people following them that are into that stuff. I think puppies, who doesn't like puppies, office pics, company culture, and pop culture, right? And so you're like, okay, if I had those, let's say 5 to 9, and again, maybe for you it's even 4, but you can start to define what are going to be the themes of my social media, right? And the theme should not be self-promotion, advertisement only, right? It should be about getting to know you, getting to know your employees, your unique value, the region you're in, animal pictures, people love that, right? Nature pictures. But think about what you want to kind of make as your core pillars for your social content, and then write those down, right? And then make sure as you plan out your month or your week, or even if you're just in a random posting where I got to get something out, that they're relating back to those pillars, right? Because that's a way to keep your message and branding consistent without having to overthink it. So I thought it was just a great little tip. It's not, super complicated. And a lot of the best social media tips, I think, are very straightforward and not very complicated to validate that, you're actually keeping on message. Now, that could be updated, and maybe every year you update it, every quarter even, you say, okay, I'm going to, look at this again. But I do think it's a very good way to just keep things on message. So I also highly encourage you guys to follow Homemade Social, because they do a lot of good stuff on Instagram. I think they're one of the agencies I was talking about that only does Instagram, actually. Okay, so let's talk about analytics. I mean, if you think about this whole webinar series, it was really trying to start out with like getting you into social media, using Instagram, kind of developing good content, sharing your unique story. And so when we talk about kind of putting it all together, now we're starting to get into a little bit more advanced topics, right? Now we could go on and do a 10, webinar series on more advanced topics, but this one I think is important, which is we want to measure, how effective we're being, right? And so we want to make sure that we're applying the right measuring stick, and we're using that to really create a feedback loop. So this is, an architecture or design that's really about building products, right? So whether those are digital products or physical products, but think about that, right? I build a product and, I get input. If you think about even, kind of focus groups, right? Hey, I launch a new cereal and I want to get people, I want to sit in a room and, behind the glass and watch them eat my cereal and get their notes about it. And I'm going to collect data. I'm going to measure their experience, right? And from that, I'm going to learn and I'm going to feed back into my next iteration of the product, right? So, hey, people thought my cereal needed more sugar, which, I tend to think most cereals, and, should be less healthy. Okay, maybe people don't think that, but, so then I'm going to take that data and I'm going to say, okay, well, for me to have a more effective product, I'm going to build that back into, cereal version 2, right? The exact same model applies to digital marketing, right? Or anything we do on social media, which is as we put posts out there or content out there, we need to make sure we're measuring that the effectiveness of that content, and not just measuring it, but then learning from that data. So what do I learn? What went well? What didn't go well? What is hitting? What's not hitting, right? What's engaging? What's not engaging? And then I'm going to take that back into the new content that I post, right? And if I don't do that, you're simply posting content with no feedback loop, right? Which would basically be like, hey, I'm going to try to sell this cereal, and I'm not even going to know if I'm actually going to get any sales data from it, right? It's like just an abyss. I'm just going to put content out there, no concept of if it actually is hitting or not, right? So we have to not only measure, but also create a process of learning from that measurement and adjusting our content. I'll give you some simple ideas of where you can start. This can be a whole almost industry in and of itself, right? A whole kind of data practice, for big companies. Think about companies like Nike and others, right? I mean, they have. I know this from my Dynatrace job, right? I think I've told folks I work in a technology role at another company, but they have teams of people, and systems, and they're investing millions and millions of dollars in all this analytics, right? Because they want to more further understand and fine tune their messaging, their product, right? How they engage with customers, because of course, every small percentage of change has a massive effect on revenue and business value, right? So it's really important at kind of Fortune 5,000 level. But I think it's also important for us to at least be aware of it as we think about this stuff, even for small businesses. So what are the types of social media analytics that you can get, for example, right out of Instagram and also out of Facebook? I'm going to focus on some Instagram examples, of course. But, demographics, right? So we'll talk a little bit about, how do you understand who your followers are? Interaction metrics, which are different, right? That's really about how people are engaging with your content. Outcome metrics, which to me would actually are maybe the most important. How do you actually measure if the overall kind of goal is being met? And then I think just kind of a little bit on the challenges of getting some of these metrics over time and why trends are important, which I think is interesting. So let's kind of dive into demographic metrics, right? And so as we think about these are from Instagram Insights, right? And if you remember, I think that was webinar 2, maybe 1. Joel talked a little bit about when you have an Instagram business account, you actually get access to this data, right? So this is something that's free. This is right in Instagram, right? This is actually right from the Instagram app. And so you can get some information about, where are people in your audience? So where are they living? In this example, Prescott Valley, right? Was a big proponent or big makeup of the demographic. Age range. So I can see sort of in big groupings, 9-year groupings, right? Where people are. I can see gender, right? And I can see kind of when my followers, this is all based on your followers, right? When they're the most active. So where are people engaging in the application, in the Instagram application? And so right away, I'm sure everybody's thinking, oh, I could see how this would be useful, right? If for whatever reason, you have a bunch of followers that aren't in your community and your focus is local business, like I have a restaurant, let's say in Show Low, and most of my followers are not in Show Low, then something's probably weird, right? I don't know if, somehow your account went viral in some way and you have a bunch of followers that aren't actually local, or you've bought followers. Hopefully don't ever do that, but some people have done that, right? That are like all outside of even the US maybe. But that's going to be a hard thing to reach then, right? If your goal is to drive people to your restaurant in Show Low and most of your followers aren't in that region, that's going to be challenging. You almost question the value of the followers at that level, right? But if I know, well, actually about 50% of my followers are local, but maybe 50% are in the Valley, right? Well, then I can start to craft my messages a little differently, right? Sometimes my messages should be around locals, like, hey, come in last minute special, right? But if more of my followers are in the Valley, and i.e. tourists, right, that maybe come up to Show Low, well, like a last minute special is not going to be so effective, right? Because I'm not going to drive up from Phoenix, the day of probably, right, to do a special. So even just kind of that fine grain of hopefully all your followers are in this, in your state mostly. Again, if you're a local business, if you're like a, e-commerce business that you can do stuff anywhere, then of course, hopefully you have followers everywhere. But, even if it's within your city, adjacent cities, all that's super helpful in terms of how you craft your messages. And if you don't look at this data, you're just making an assumption. Oh, I think, my followers are all in Show Low. Well, they might not be, right? And therefore I should probably change my approach. Same thing with age. I mean, age is a little challenging, obviously, because it's like you don't want to make assumptions about, oh, people that are in the 45, age group, my age group, they have this particular way of seeing the world, or people that are 18 or this way, right? And the same thing kind of with gender. We don't want to make big assumptions about, gender. You don't exclude either gender, but I think it's still helpful to understand that as you think about how to message to your business, particularly if you have small businesses that maybe are driving traffic from one gender more than the other, right? In terms of like clothing boutiques or maybe spa stuff that even though that's becoming more, I think, unisex. But I think it's interesting to understand this data because you can use it in that feedback loop to craft better messages. And the active times is also really important. This can help you know when to post your content. Where are people kind of going to be the most likely to be on their Instagram, your followers, right? On their Instagram and actually engaging so that you can post the right content at the right time. So just understanding that very little bit, this is not about complex statistics and analytics. This is just like every once in a while, check out that Instagram Insights and then think about, do I need to change my pillars, my 5 pillars of postings or my message to make sure I'm hitting the right demographic, right? Or hitting, connecting with my existing demographic. Or maybe do I need to go out and seek a new demographic, right? For example, if you don't have enough local followers, how do I get local followers? We'll talk about maybe using paid promotions in a second to do that. And then so that's demographics. The interactions, this is a little screenshot of some of our posts, and there's so much data in the Instagram Insights, and this one does go back in time, so you can go back like all time last year and look at, this happened to be number of likes, top likes, right? We only have about 235 followers. Social media companies are not usually followed hugely unless you kind of blow up. But having 28, 30 likes, that's actually pretty good in terms of ratio. So what this helps me understand, and Joel understand, who runs our social media, is what do people like? And real surprising, they like our dog. Her name's Roxy. They like, pictures of the local community. And they also like when we highlight other businesses, right? And there's all sorts of metrics here. There's reach. There's, I think likes is an interesting one, because that's, you clearly understand people are engaging with your content. But you can also look at shares and saves and a bunch of other things. But maybe just start with likes. And so what do you do with this data? Well, then it tells me, okay, or tells Joel, who runs the account, we should probably continue, or maybe put as a pillar, pictures of Roxy, which we have, right? People love cute dogs. And we'll continue to take, pictures of our community, because people like to sort of see themselves reflected. And hey, this business is local, and that's a cool picture of the lights that were, there for the Christmas. And we'll also continue to share content, around local businesses. So it can help us develop a strategy versus just like, I like posting pictures of my cat, right? Like, I don't like cats, so I wouldn't do that. But if I had a cat, and you might think, I love posting pictures of my cat with a hat, on, or something, silly pictures. And you look at your data and you're like, yeah, but those are, half as much engaged with as other, content, right? Well, then I would want to lessen my cat pictures, for an example. The reality is, we all know that wouldn't be true. People love cats and they would post, engage with it. But I'd want to lessen that, right? And I'd want to double down on those pieces of content that are getting more engagement, right? So I think that's a way we can simply use this engagement metric to help us drive better content choices. And then I think the third kind of piece I was going to talk about is outcome metrics, right? So how do we measure? So we talked about demographics, so sort of who our user base is and how do we adjust our messaging there, or maybe try to adjust our user base. Second is sort of engagement metrics. So how do I look at what's being engaged with so I can do more content like that, or the inverse, like what's not being engaged with, and I can kind of deprioritize that. The third is this driving my goals? Remember, we talked about having goals, not just doing social media for the heck of it, right? And so this is one way to do that, which connects websites to social media. I see, you knew I wouldn't give up my rant here. But this is a customer that we're working with, where we post, she has blog posts that we put on her website, and then we post social media, content to say, hey, go check out our blog. And we actually did that at these 3 points, right? And what you can see clearly is when we do that, people do go to the website, right? So again, this is not about rocket science. You need a PhD in statistics to look at analytics. This is about common sense. If I post, for example, a promotion code, then whoever's running my store for that week, let's say that the promotion code is valid in an in-person store, we should be tracking how many people came in with that promotion code, right? Because if it's like, wow, we saw 20 new sales from that promotion code, well, then that gives me a way of knowing that my outcomes, my posting that on social media and only on social media, connected with an audience, which converted into people actually coming to the store, right? In this example, it's not a promotion code. We're not selling something. It's driving people to website content. That website content helps them understand the business owner and engage with the business, right? And hopefully eventually leads to more sales. But even that is again, tracking it, understanding when I posted this, I saw people click, right? I saw people engage. So think about how you can actually start to tie outcome metrics to, and sometimes it's even like the simple thing of, we kind of don't see it as much anymore, but how did you learn about this business, right? I come into the dentist's office. Oh, I learned about it through social media. Oh, okay. Well, that's an outcome metric. How many more of those are we seeing now that we've invested in social media? How many more return customers are we seeing, or whatever, right? So you get the idea is whatever metric, even if it's handwritten, how did you hear about us? Can help you connect the investment that you're making to the outcomes for your business. This was just to show this data for this customer, just to show that we're not making this up. Most of her traffic is mobile, and most of the source is Google. So it kind of highlights the importance of a website that works on mobile, and also owning your Google My Business, which she does. Now, the last part of analytics is sort of long-term metrics, right? And this is where Instagram doesn't do a great job. It does it on some of the engagement metrics. As I said, like you can go back and look at your content over the last year or more. I think it's actually, you can even go back over all time. But if I want to look at, followers and kind of their engagement patterns, particularly followers, right? That's a big one. Are we getting more followers? Are we losing followers? Instagram doesn't do a good job of showing more than a week's worth of data. And so this is where you would need an external tool. Most of them you have to pay for. In fact, I think all of them you do. This is Later, just as a shout out to them. We're not affiliated with them. We don't get any money from them, but Later is a great social media tool, scheduling and analytics tool. It does cost money though. We do use it, but it's not free. But Later is an example. There's lots of others, right? Where you can actually start to import, or it will connect to your Instagram account and Facebook and actually start to pull the data in so that you can save it over time. So you can actually start to see, hey, we started working with this client here, or your own account, right? And then, we've seen this growth in followers. Or actually we're seeing, more people see the content, less people now. How do we adjust that? Or how do we think about why that is, right? So some of these long-term trends are also important as you think about your strategy. It's another outcome metric. I don't know if it's the most important outcome metric. I think some of those more business metrics are, but I do think it's interesting if you can afford it to start to collect this data in these tools so that you can start to see how effective your overall social media approach is. So hopefully that was helpful. That's kind of scratching the surface of analytics. But if all you did was those things, which is nothing, right? I don't want to make it sound super simple, but that would be a really good start into understanding, the effectiveness of your content. And by the way, if you're working with a social media firm and they're not providing analytics around that sort of stuff, when you ask for it or ongoing or whatever, or they're not collecting it for you, then you should probably push them on that or look to work with somebody else. So paid social media promotions. This is an interesting one. So the first thing, there's two types of paid promotions on Instagram, right? There's Instagram ads and there are promoted posts. And the big difference, and we're going to talk all about promoted posts because it's way easier and simpler for a small business owner. But Instagram ads, think about that as more legitimate ad campaigns, right? If you really were wanting to take your game up in terms of ads, Instagram ads, you can't do it in the app. You have to do it in the Facebook ad studio. And you have more control over the ads and the targeting of the audience and things like that. But it's really probably, if you're going to do that, you'd want to work with somebody to do it, not something that you would necessarily want to do on your own, unless you're very savvy and like have a big e-commerce presence or something where you really want to drive, conversions and things like that. Promoted posts is if you're going to experiment with spending a little dollars, and it can be very few dollars, on paid kind of advertisement on Instagram, I would highly recommend you start with promoted posts. So what does that look like? Well, you see that, I don't know why my color of my highlighter there was so ugly, but you see this sponsored, right? As you guys are scrolling through Instagram, you should be seeing sponsored, posts. That's what it would show up is if you promoted your own posts, right? Is it would show up as sponsored. And why would you use promoted posts? So why do this at all? If we're following all the kind of principles of social media, do we even need promoted posts, right? And the answer is, I don't think you necessarily do need them, but I think they're fun to experiment with if you have, $10, $20, $30 just to see the impact. I would encourage you to do that, right? This is not something that costs hundreds of dollars, and it's something that you can kind of see, does this actually get me more followers in my area or things like that. When you would want to use them, I think if you're new to the area, new to Instagram, new business, right? And you just want to get awareness as quickly as possible. Gaining organic followers kind of just through the normal posting process can be a little slower. Promoted posts can help that. You have a special event, special promotion, giveaway, new product. The bottom line here is promoted posts are about creating more awareness, right? They're getting your content in front of more potential customers. So it's really about, instead of my followers seeing my posts, and maybe a few other people based on my hashtags or my location tag, I'm actually going to kind of push this in the feed of people who I think would want my content, but aren't seeing it right now, right? A big key is that last bullet there. It requires great posts and content. So promoted posts is not going to take a bad, non-performing, ugly post and make it awesome, right? It's simply going to take that bad, ugly, non-performing post and push it in front of more people, which you could actually say would annoy them potentially, right? So that's a really key part of this, is you have to find a post that actually does really well. Now, Instagram, and there's a 4-step process, right? Instagram will do a good job of actually sort of saying to you, though I think it doesn't always, it kind of maybe over, it's trying to tickle our ego a little bit. It'll say things like, hey, this post is better performing than most of your posts. Think about promoting it, right? So if you're on Instagram, you actually have seen that probably. Be a little careful about that. Sometimes that bar of like, is it better, especially if you're just starting out, is like, well, this post was horrible, this post a little bit better, and so it's going to say that it's amazing, right? So look at the data first and really make sure you, and also ask your friends or business partners, hey, do you think this post is really good? Do you think people will like it? Because you want to choose a good post, right? So first step is pick a post that's high performing or you think will be high performing, right? The second is in Instagram, and I'll show you this, you can select your goal. You have 3 types of goals. You want people to visit your Instagram profile. So, check you out as a business, maybe a link to your website. See, websites again. The second is direct website visits. So not just even in Instagram profile, but actually go right to your website. And the third is you want them to message you, right? DM you or something. So there's 3 goal types, right? The third step is you can define your audience. So what that means is Instagram will say, well, I will automatically try to show people who are like your current followers this content that's automatically defined, or you can define it in more detail. And I actually think that makes more sense, particularly if you're starting out and you don't have a ton of followers, then maybe you want to be a bit more targeted. Hey, I only want to show this in Prescott Valley, right? And I only want to target men over 50 or whatever, right? You can do that kind of defining of the audience. And then you define your budget, and your budget can be very small. I mean, I've done stuff that's like $5 promotions, right? Just to kind of play around with it. But it certainly can be very small, and you'll see how that works in a second. So again, define the post, define your goal, pick your audience, and plan your budget, and then you're ready to launch your first paid promotion. So how do you do that? You start with any post, this little promote button. So this is an example of one of the posts we did for this webinar. And we didn't promote it, but we could have, and if you click on the promote button, you'll be taken into this Instagram promoted post area, right? First step is define your audience. As I said, automatic is the default. So it's going to say, target people like your followers. Works well if you have lots of followers and they're the followers you want, right? So remember, this goes back to analytics. If your followers are like all in India, and you're trying to do business in Pine Top, probably don't want to target people like that, right? Instead, you want to create your own. Now, I've created one called Business, which is why this shows up for our account, but you would create your own, right? And if I create my own, I can give it a name. So it might be for a particular promotion. I can give it a location that's geolocations, multi-locations. So I can say Show Low, Pine Top, Snowflake, whatever, right? You can even do interests, which is kind of interesting, which when we did it, we chose like people who might be interested in digital marketing, which is like, really? Are there that many people that are interested in digital marketing? But, hey, people that like food, people that like, dentists or whatever, I guess. Age and gender. So if you want to target a particular age group or set of age groups, but all these are multi-select, so you can do multiple selections, right? You're not having to just choose one. And then I can define my budget. And this was an example that I just kind of plugged in here. Hey, I'm going to spend $10 a day for 6 days, right? Which is not insignificant, but not crazy, $60. And Instagram will estimate for you, and you can do all this without spending any dollars, right? Until you actually commit to that. I'm going to get this content in front of 6,000 to 16,000 additional people, right? That's huge in terms of reach. So, my normal reach is probably, a couple hundred because of the followers we have. So this is taking it up, massively. Now, does that guarantee everybody's going to like my content, follow me, hit my website? Of course not, right? The content's not effective. People will scroll right by it. So it's something that you would want to, I think, play with and experiment with to see how effective it is for you and your business. And so that's our kind of pro tip. Start small and experiment. I mean, that's kind of the really cool thing about digital in general, is that you can do things on a very small scale and actually watch and see the data, right? The outcome data and the analytics data without, that you could never have done 20 years ago, right? Imagine like, I'm going to take out an ad in a magazine and then, which is of course extremely expensive. Let's talk about National Magazine or something. And I'm going to try to get analytics on is that actually effective? That's even challenging, right? Because people don't click on magazines, they read magazines and then they show up. And very slow as well, right? Okay, I want to change my ad and try something new next month. We'll have to wait a whole month. In digital, it's all just like compressed, both in terms of cost, in terms of time, and then also just massively better analytics. So I can do something like, I'm going to spend $10 because I just want to see if I can get my content out in front of more people. Will that gain more followers, or did I get more engagement, right? And I can do a small experiment, take a post and put it through the Instagram promoted post algorithm and, put it out there for $10 and see what the results are, right? So I think digital in general, and the same you could say about websites, you can make small changes, see how people engage. Digital in general allows us to be much more nimble and agile and experimental for a lot less money as we start to explore kind of the things that could work better for our business and drive business outcomes. All right, last quick topic, make summer work for you. And so summer's coming up. Summer is coming. I can't believe it's March. Like I said, it seems like it was just like New Year's Eve, not that long ago. But, when I think about our region, again, we're up in Show Low, White Mountains, Pine Top area, but also just other small rural communities, particularly, we get so much summer visitors. I think up here it's like double, right? The population doubles with tourist visits, with people who have summer homes. And, so much of the money that we make as small businesses is tied to our tourism. And so I think as we think about social media content, it's important to think like a tourist, right? What does a tourist care about seeing on social media, right? I think part of it is they want to feel like a local. So they want kind of the inside scoop. Social media is a great way to provide that, right? So sort of like, hey, this is happening. This cool thing is happening, right? They also have to be, you also have to be aware that they don't know the lingo or what's going on. So a lot of times we live in small communities. We think everybody knows what the heck is going on because if you're a full-time resident, everybody does, right? It's like, oh, did you hear the rumor about this? There might be a Sprouts here, whatever, right? But people who are tourists, they don't know all that. So we have to be aware as we target more tourists coming into the summer and we start to post stuff, be aware that they're not coming from the community necessarily and they don't know exactly what's going on. They want to spread their words to friends. They have limited choices. They might be here for a weekend, a week, a couple weeks. I mean, obviously some of them for the whole summer, but even then, you only have limited choices. There are only so many times you're going to go out to eat or so many places you're going to visit or boutiques you're going to check out or whatever. And so they want the best, coolest, unique. And so as we start thinking about our own content, how do we make sure that they kind of feel like, hey, coming to our business is really, the best, coolest, the most unique. And then people love to bring their kids, their dogs, their special someone, making people know that your business is a good place for that, right? If it is also something I think that's pretty important because people like to do that with their family unit, even if it's just their dogs or cats. So what is your summer strategy? Get consistent now, right? Don't wait. I mean, I've seen businesses like, oh, let's start to post in May, right? Well, the algorithm for social media is not going to be really kind to that. I think you want to be consistent now so that you're kind of, maybe you add more content as you get closer to the summer, but you're not just ramping up right at the summer. And then stay consistent even when it hurts, right? This is a hard thing, even for us. Like you get busier in the summer and you're like, I don't want to do social media, right? I don't want to keep my website updated, but it's super important that we do because this is a time where we can make more money. Spotlight local events, people love to know that. And then share your insider information, right? People love that on social media. Hey, this new thing, this is a great place to eat. And you might be like, well, but that's not connected to my business. Yeah, but it kind of is, right? As you start to promote your own community, then your business will also be promoted, right? And so people want to come here more, leave some more tourist demand, right? So people like local finds, off the beaten path. Document your own summer adventures. So as we already said, digital marketing is human connection. It's your unique story. It's not just your unique business story. Social media can be about your own story if you're comfortable with it, right? So if you go do something fun, right, you take a week off if you get to, share that. People want to know you as a business owner. Oh, wow, you're into mountain biking. Oh, that's really cool. Oh, you took your kids here and went fishing. Like, oh, that's really cool. Like, think about sharing a bit more of yourself on social media as a business owner. Share specials and promotions, of course. The summer is the period to really kind of double down on that stuff. Repost what customers share. So you'll see that in Joel's video about Instagram stories. As people are tagging your business, and saying, hey, I went here and had this great cupcake, right? For example, or something. Repost that. That creates kind of a viral, piece, right? And you can repost their content and say, without even, anything else, just as a way of kind of supporting that viral engagement. Remember, even in any time outside of the summer, nature, pets, and food always work. People love that. And then join forces. So if you can, use shared hashtags in your community. If you have local businesses that you want to get together and use shared hashtags, repost other local business content. People love that. I really feel like that's a huge way to help your business is, again, repost other people's content, and then be part of like a buy local campaign like we have up here, and post that content as well, right? So that you're sort of creating a bigger approach and you don't feel like you're just a business all on your own, trying to do it on your own. Coming to the end, this is what I want to leave you guys with. You can do it. A lot of stuff in the last 3 webinars, but it's all achievable, right? It's all stuff. You don't have to have a degree in marketing. You don't have to be a graphic designer, right? You don't have to be an analytics expert. You can do this stuff as a small business owner. The tools are there. The material hopefully here is helpful, and there's tons of other good material online. You can do it. Now, of course, if you need help, work with someone like us. We're happy to help. Takeaways today: please have a modern website. Pretty please, I'm begging you. Develop a pillar strategy. Measure everything. Do small experiments. I would say use promotions sparingly, but target. Start now for the tourist season. Let your local expertise shine in your community. Tourists love that stuff, right? Check out the Instagram stories overview that Joel did. And I think after this, we'll be following up with a recording of this session and this PowerPoint. You can check out our blog, you can check out the Learn area, and you can reach out to us at info@scoutcollective.digital. These are some links, but it's just easier to come here. They've all been kind of put here as well. Obviously, when we send the presentation out, you guys will have all the links, but that is, that's with that. Hopefully some questions got answered during the chat, but we have a few minutes, and we're all okay. Hopefully you guys were able to hear, right? We didn't have a whole thing where we couldn't hear me talk. Okay.
I think you were loud and clear, Ben.
That would have been a very, to tell a funny story, in my corporate job, I had an all-team meeting. There was about 100 folks on my team on the call, and I had myself on mute for the first 5 minutes, and I was like, this is so good. This stuff is so good, and no one could hear me. So I was hoping I just didn't do the last hour. So question, why is Instagram better than Facebook? Check out our webinar 1, Tara. There's a lot of good data about the demographic shift. Facebook is really declining in all the kind of emerging demographics. Instagram, not to mention, there's a lot of challenges around the political and ad content and news content, et cetera, et cetera. For those who want to go see webinar 1, it's at, I don't know, Joel, if you were able to put that link in the chat.
I'm close to it.
But you can check out that Scout Collective/Learn. Joel just put the link in the chat. Click on there, you get all the content, that from webinar 1 and 2. Thanks, Robin, for the shout out. Scout Collective is fantastic. They're super easy and a pleasure to work with. So that's very nice, Robin, appreciate it. If you guys have other questions, you can always reach out to us directly. Our email's on this slide. You'll get all these slides in the next few days, I'm assuming. But we're always happy to just talk too. So it doesn't cost us anything to talk about your digital strategy, talk about how your website's doing or your social media is doing. We're always happy to kind of just chat with folks, because we really believe, again, small businesses thriving helps our communities thrive. So that's really our goal, and digital is a big part of that. So hopefully all the other questions got answered. Look like they did. Thanks everybody for the time today.
Ben, Joel, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it. Everybody
Excellent.
have a wonderful week.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.